A breeze of change is blowing over the team right now, and fans have started to comment. The break was supposed to bring enthusiasm, renewed energy, and confidence for an important season. But instead of peace, problems have begun to surface. Between the usual pricing decisions during the break and the great speculation about the future of one of the franchise's biggest stars, the tension within the organization is much greater than it initially seemed. And now, with the important dates approaching, all aspects are being addressed amidst these events. But first, click the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any updates. Let's go! Myles Garrett's absence from Browns OTAs is suddenly becoming one of the biggest talking points surrounding this franchise. And while the organization continues to publicly shut down any speculation about a trade, there are enough unusual details piling up that Browns fans are starting to ask serious questions about what could happen later this season. The first thing that needs to be said is this: Garrett skipping voluntary OTAs by itself is not shocking. He's done it before. He's a veteran superstar, one of the best defensive players in football, and last season he stayed away from voluntary work before turning around and putting together another historic year. Nobody inside Cleveland is panicking because he missed a few spring practices. But this off-season feels different for one major reason. There's a brand new head coach leading the Browns, and according to Todd Monken, he still hasn't even met Myles Garrett face-to-face. That detail immediately raised eyebrows around the league, because franchise players usually make it a priority to establish that relationship early, especially after a coaching change. What makes the situation even more interesting is the timing of Garrett's contract restructure back in March. The Browns moved option dates from March to September, effectively creating a much larger trade window if the organization ever decided to move him before the season. Multiple league insiders pointed out how unusual the adjustment was because Cleveland didn't gain meaningful short-term cap relief from the move. In other words, this wasn't a standard restructure designed to help the team financially right now. The biggest effect was flexibility. That immediately led to speculation that the Browns quietly wanted to keep every option open in case things changed later in the year. Financially, the numbers explain why June 1st matters so much in all of this. Trading Garrett before June 1st would have crushed Cleveland's cap situation, but waiting until after June 1st dramatically changes the equation and actually creates cap savings for the organization. That's why the rumors are starting to heat up now, instead of earlier in the offseason. The calendar matters here. If a trade was ever going to happen, it was always going to be after June 1st. At the same time, Andrew Berry and the Browns front office have been incredibly aggressive in denying any intention of trading Garrett. Berry publicly stated that Garrett is viewed as a career Brown and one of the faces of the organization. Adam Schefter also reported that Cleveland strongly denied any chance of a deal when asked directly about the restructure. From the team's perspective, that absolutely makes sense. Why would a franchise trying to compete willingly trade arguably the best player it has ever drafted? Garrett is still dominant, still feared across the league, and still playing at a Defensive Player of the Year level. But here's where Browns fans are paying close attention. What has Garrett himself actually said? Very little. And sometimes silence says plenty. Since the coaching hire, the biggest public reaction from Garrett was an Instagram story posting an exhausted meme after Monken got the job instead of Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator Garrett reportedly wanted as head coach. Garrett loved playing under Schwartz, respected him, and clearly had strong feelings about the direction of the coaching search. Browns fans noticed that immediately because it was one of the only public clues into how Garrett was feeling about the organization after another disappointing season. And remember, this is still the same Myles Garrett who requested a trade in 2025 because he wanted to compete for championships. Winning matters deeply to him right now. He's 30 years old, still in his prime, still chasing greatness, and after another frustrating season with only 5 wins, you can understand why speculation keeps growing any time there's tension surrounding the franchise. Garrett has already proven he can dominate individually, but at this stage of his career, personal records probably don't matter nearly as much as playoff success. That's why mandatory minicamp on June 9th suddenly feels extremely important. If Garrett shows up, meets with the media, and fully participates, a lot of this noise probably cools down quickly. But if he skips mandatory work too, the rumors are going to explode nationally, because then it stops looking like a normal veteran absence and starts looking like something bigger brewing behind the scenes. The Browns clearly do not want to trade Myles Garrett right now, but they may have intentionally created a situation where they at least have the flexibility to consider it later if the season goes sideways again. And that's the detail Browns fans cannot ignore. If Cleveland struggles by the trade deadline and Garrett becomes frustrated all over again, there could absolutely be contenders willing to offer a historic package of first-round picks for one of the NFL's most dominant defensive players. The question is whether the Browns would ever seriously entertain it if that moment arrives. So Browns fans, what do you think about all of this? Do you believe Myles Garrett finishes his career in Cleveland? Or do you think these rumors eventually become something much bigger as the season unfolds? What makes this entire situation even more fascinating is that the Browns may be looking at 2 completely different timelines, depending on how the 2026 season starts. If Cleveland comes out strong, wins games early, and looks like a legitimate playoff contender, then all of these rumors probably disappear overnight. Garrett stays focused on chasing a Super Bowl, the organization keeps its defensive cornerstone, and the off-season tension becomes just another forgotten storyline. But if the Browns stumble again, if the offense struggles, if the quarterback situation becomes unstable, and if losses start piling up by October, then suddenly the conversation changes entirely. Because at that point, the Browns wouldn't just be dealing with trade rumors from the outside, they'd be dealing with a superstar who already showed once that he's willing to push for a new situation if he believes the franchise isn't moving toward winning at the highest level. And unlike previous years, Cleveland now has the financial structure in place to realistically consider those possibilities if things go south. The scary part for Browns fans is imagining what the market for Myles Garrett would actually look like. We're not talking about a normal trade package here. This is a future Hall of Fame pass rusher who still looks completely dominant. Garrett is not declining. He's not slowing down. If anything, he continues to evolve his game while remaining one of the most physically impossible players to block in football. Teams around the league know that a player like this almost never becomes available. That's why executives would line up immediately with massive offers if Cleveland even hinted that discussions were possible. And one point that keeps coming up around league circles is that Garrett's trade value may never be higher than it is right now. He's coming off another monster season, he's healthy, he's motivated, and contenders know adding a player like Garrett instantly changes championship odds. The Browns understand that too. That doesn't mean they want to trade him, but it absolutely explains why they would want flexibility built into his contract instead of locking every door permanently shut. Philadelphia has already been mentioned as one possible dream destination if this situation ever reached that point. And honestly, it's easy to understand why people connect those dots. The Eagles are aggressive, they chase elite talent relentlessly, and they're built to win immediately. A contender with multiple first-round picks and a strong roster foundation would absolutely view Garrett as the final piece to a championship run. Cleveland would likely demand an enormous haul in return, potentially multiple first-round selections spread across future drafts. But even discussing those scenarios shows just how complicated this has become for the Browns organization. Because emotionally, Moving Garrett would feel almost impossible for the fan base. He's been the face of the franchise for years. Through coaching changes, quarterback chaos, disappointing seasons, and constant roster turnover, Garrett remained the superstar Cleveland could rely on every single Sunday. Trading him would signal a massive philosophical shift for the organization, especially while trying to convince fans that the team still plans to compete. That's why the Browns are trying so hard publicly to shut down the speculation. They understand how explosive this topic is. The moment people genuinely believe Garrett could leave, every loss becomes magnified, every absence becomes controversial, and every social media post gets analyzed by the entire NFL world. We're already seeing that happen now with something as simple as him not attending voluntary workouts. Imagine what happens if the season starts poorly. Still, there's another side to this that Browns fans shouldn't ignore. Garrett has always been passionate about winning, but he's also been deeply loyal to Cleveland throughout most of his career. He stayed committed through difficult years. He embraced the city. He became the identity of the defense and one of the most respected players in the building. That matters. It's entirely possible that once mandatory minicamp begins and the regular season approaches, everything settles down naturally. One appearance in front of reporters, one strong statement about believing in the team, and suddenly the narrative changes fast. For now, though, the uncertainty remains. The Browns insist they do not want to trade Myles Garrett. Garrett himself hasn't publicly fueled the rumors beyond a few subtle moments. But the contract changes, the coaching situation, the missed OTAs, and the memories of his previous trade request have combined to create a story that is not going away anytime soon. And honestly, until Garrett speaks directly about where he stands with this franchise, the speculation is only going to continue growing. The next few months could end up defining the future of the Cleveland Browns. Either the team proves it can finally build a consistent winner around one of the greatest defensive players in franchise history, or the pressure surrounding Garrett's long-term future becomes impossible to ignore. Browns fans are watching every move right now because they know what's at stake if this situation ever reaches a breaking point. Make sure you subscribe, leave a like, and click on the video that's on your screen right now, because all the latest Browns updates, breaking news, and insider discussions are going to be right here first, before anywhere else.